Srila Prabhupada's purport. The value of great parentage and noble birth is evaluated here in connection with the birth of Vidura. The culture of a human being begins when the father invests his semen in the womb of the mother. According to his status of work, a living entity is placed in a particular father's semen and because Vidura was not an ordinary living entity, he was given the chance to be born from the semen of Vyasa. The birth of a human being is a great science, and therefore reformation of the act of impregnation, according to the Vedic ritual called Garbhadan Samskar, is very important for generating good population. The problem is not to check the growth of the population, but to generate good population on the level of Vidura, Vyas, and Maitreya. There is no need to check the growth of population if the children are born as human beings, with all precautions regarding their birth. So-called birth control is not only vicious, but also useless. O Vidura, it is not at all wonderful that you have so accepted the Lord without deviation of thought, for you were born from the semen of Vyasadeva. So we'll make some comments on Srila Prabhupada's purport and of course the verse itself. So Prabhupada begins by, in his purport, commenting, saying that the value of great parentage and noble birth is evaluated here in connection with the birth of Vidura. So Vidura is a great saintly person, and in the next verse we're actually given some history as to who he is and why he's born in this particular place, and time and circumstance. Every living entity has a past, many lifetimes, many inconceivable number of lifetimes, and according to our activities, our desires and inclinations, we take birth one life after the other, on and on, until we awaken our love of God, until we awaken our Krishna consciousness. Well, Vidura is a person, actually a rare soul, because he has pure love of God. He's a Krishna conscious personality. And this whole chapter, in fact, this canto is bringing us to, we're as it were, eavesdropping. We're being privy to some very confidential and elevated conversations. I don't know if you watch television. I don't. You catch the news sometimes. Who said this? Who said that? All about some very temporary, fleeting, miserable situation here in the material world. And this passes as news. These days there's a lot of talk about false news. That's a big topic on its own. What's deemed false news 1 month is shown to be spot on a couple of months later, and what we're told is news, a lot of it's just propaganda. Here in the Bhagavatam, we're getting a different category of information, a different category of conversation. It isn't the category of celebrities, pop stars and sportsmen. It is the conversations and exchanges between self-realized souls. So the quality of conversation is on a different level altogether. We won't find that in the day-to-day mainstream media. It's not there. Now and again, there's an interview with someone with a few insights into what's going on, but very rarely is there anyone who's giving any interviews or even accessible as to the actual situation. Everyone's aware how the trials and tribulations of this world is creating so many problems, one after another, after another, after another, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. And we'll come to that, some of the reasons for that, a little bit later in the purport. But here in this conversation between Vidura and Maitreya, we're getting some wonderful insights into the nature of transcendence. Prabhupada says the next line, Prabhupada says that the culture of a human being begins when the father invests his semen in the womb of the mother. The culture of a human being begins when the father invests his semen in the womb of his mother. In other words, sex life. He says that's when the culture of human life begins. How can that be? How can someone who is even unborn, how can human culture begin when there's not even any birth? Because in the Vedic paradigm, we understand, Prabhupada points it out many times, the actual delivery of the child into the world isn't the beginning of the embodiment of the soul. The embodiment begins at the moment of conception, when the sperm enters the ovum and the ovum begins to divide, and over a period of 9 months, as a human, that eventually results in a human being. But the soul is taking its birth in this particular lifetime there in the womb of a mother. And of course, in this particular verse, it's a very elevated soul who's taking birth from a very elevated father. But in human life, not everyone is of a high consciousness. Therefore, Prabhupada goes on to explain in this purport the necessity of preparing for the birth of the child by a process called Garbhadan Samskar. This is when a husband and wife come together and create a favorable situation for an elevated soul to take birth. An elevated soul. They're inviting, please come. We'll give you all facility to make this lifetime your last birth here in this world. And according to the consciousness of male and female, mother and father, when they unite, according to the consciousness, they attract a particular quality of soul. So this is a whole science, totally lost in the modern world. And as Prabhupada says elsewhere throughout his purports, practically non-existent in India even. Once upon a time, the leaders of society, the Brahmins, the wise men and teachers, the Kshatriyas, the guardians of society, the chivalrous kings and royal order, and even the Vaishyas, the merchants, those who arranged for to feed society and growing, they would perform this Garbha Samskara. And as such, elevated souls would be given the opportunity and invited to take birth. But in the Kali Yuga, the present age we live in, such, Prabhupada says, reformatory processes don't take place. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda Ki Jai. Please offer your obeisances to the Lord. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda Ki Jai. So this reformatory process, reformatory, why is it described as reformatory? Because the process of the inclination of sex desire and the process of sexual congress in the material world, as there's many songs about this. One song, everybody's doing it. It's an old song. Every living entity, apart from amoebas and a few single-celled animals, which they just split into two. But apart from that, every living entity is engaging in sex life, to procreate. And this is the binding shackles of material existence. This desire to lord it over the material world, to be the enjoyer, whether male or female. So the reformatory process is to utilize, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I am that sex life which is according to religious principles. So this is an intimate subject, and I can't think of anyone less qualified to speak about it than myself, but somehow or other, by the arrangement of providence, I will have to speak on this particular verse. Better to have a fixed-up householder speaking, or even a sannyas whose transcendental insights, who has real potency. But speaking to Grihastha friends of mine who've engaged this process, has utilized this process of Garbha Samskara, many of them say, they acknowledge the difference between their children, those children who were conceived with the Garbha Samskara process, and those who were conceived as a result of affection and just the normal procedures in married life. They say, we see the difference. See the difference. So what is this Garbha Samskara? Prabhupada says it's to the husband and wife at a favourable time, at a favourable time of day, at a favourable time astrologically, and at a favourable time of the month for the lady. The husband and wife, they chant Hare Krishna mantra, 50 rounds, which is some endeavour, 50 rounds, but it purifies the consciousness. And then coming together, husband and wife, their reference point is how to please the Lord. The reference point isn't simply to gratify the senses, but the reference point is how to please the Lord, begging for the mercy and blessings of the spiritual master and the parampara. And in such a mentality, special souls will want to come to take advantage of human life. Human life is very rare. Human life is very, very rare. Very rare amongst all the species of life. But every species is enjoying the sex desire. And Srila Prabhupada says, we find it difficult, this is difficult to sometimes wrap our head around. Prabhupada says that the sex pleasure in every species of life is the same. Well, how can that be, we think? How can that be? The sex life of a bug or a mosquito is the same as the sex pleasure of a human being. How can it be? No. It's a fact. The living entity is awarded a body whereby he can enjoy his eating and sleeping and mating and defending in 1,000,001 different ways. But that's the core activity in the material world, is eating and sleeping and mating and defending. So whether it's with nuclear weapons and digital hanky-panky, or whether it's with claws and teeth or whatever, defense is there, and eating is there, and mating is there. And very dangerous sometimes in the material world. There are certain species of life for whom mating is quite dangerous. We've all heard of the praying mantis. During the process, the male and female, the lady actually chews the head off the male. She's actually eating the male as he's doing his business. And his head's gone, and still his body keeps going. And then there's certain spiders. There's the spider called the black widow spider. You know why it's called a black widow spider? Because the female eats the male after they've mated. In fact, spiders don't mate in the usual sense, that the male, he secretes his semen in a little package, little silken package, and he offers it to the female. It's a little gift. But and she'll accept that. I'd accept that. But he's lunch. And amongst the spiders, generally speaking, I don't have a fixation on spiders, but I'm interested in nature. It's nice to see. By seeing how nature works, we can get a glimpse of the material nature and the destination of the conditioned soul. It isn't as if it's not happened to us. We've been spiders, we've been praying mantises and mosquitoes, we've been elephants, we've been angels, we've been up to the Davic realms, we've been down to the lower hellish realms, we've been round and round, and round and round, over and over again. And here we are in a human life, complaining about the weather. Human life is such a gift. I was just going to mention about the spiders. So watch out if you're a spider. Of course, there's no spiders who can, even if there are, and it's a very clean temple. It's a spotless temple, so there's probably not many spiders around, but maybe under the floorboards there's one or two. But they can't hear this, can they? They hear, but they're not going to be hearing. I don't know if spiders have ears. They probably don't. But the female spiders, usually, they're big, and the males are very small. Very small spiders. So the male spider, sometimes he's if she doesn't catch him straight away, she's pleased with him for some reason or other. So then the male spider, he can't resist another look to see his mate, and he kind of jumps forward and has a quick look, and he jumps back again, which is a very foolish thing to do, because somewhere or other maybe he feels he's conquered the female. Well, I might be a little spider, but hey, I've got some potency. So he'll have a look, and she'll grab him. That's it. He's finished. She eats him. Curiosity. You say curiosity kills the cat. Well, curiosity also kills the spider. So whatever species of life we look at, this sex desire and sexual communion is there. But in human life especially, it can be sanctified. Human life, the first purpose of human life is to sanctify everything. To sanctify the senses. How do we sanctify the senses? By using the senses in the service of the Supreme Lord. Material life means to use my senses in the service of me. I exploit my senses. I want to enjoy my tongue, my ears, my eyes, my nose, my belly, my mind, my genital, for me. Me. That's material life. And as a consequence of that, there's 8,400,000 different species that the soul can move through to enjoy the senses separate from God. He's enjoying. They're enjoying. But they're also struggling. Very dangerous. Material life is very dangerous. You see, when you see the birds, a few pecks, and then they're looking around to see there's nothing coming to eat them. A couple more pecks, and if they're not conscious or aware, a hawk may come or something. Something's going to get them, a cat. But we can eat relatively peacefully. At the moment, some countries in the world you can't eat peacefully. If you live in Gaza, you can't live peacefully. Not just get many places. If you live in Ukraine. If you live on the border of Ukraine and Russia, the Russians can't eat peacefully. We have this little oasis of peacefulness at the moment, whereby we can conduct our eating, sleeping, mating, and defending in a transcendental way. Human life is to transcendental, purify our activities. So the potency of transcendental sound vibration is such that within the ashram of married life, we can invite great souls to take birth. And there are prime examples in our tradition. Srila Prabhupada himself, his father was a great devotee, pure devotee. And as a result of that purity of consciousness, a great soul, Srila Prabhupada, took birth. Prabhupada was forecast 5,000 years ago by Lord Krishna. Prabhupada was forecast 500 years ago by Lord Chaitanya. So among sadhus and saints and the great devotees, Prabhupada is very, very, very special. Confirmed. Very special. No one else was able to take Lord Chaitanya's mission around the world. And in terms of the time and the circumstance and culture, And Prabhupada's upbringing and his training, his profession as he had his own little business. He was wise. He knew the workings of the world. He could do what he did. And in the case of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he had many children. He was praying for a ray of Vishnu. He was praying for a great devotee to come and help him in his mission. And his son was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master. So this process works. And I'll give you an example which really took me by surprise. I read this a few months ago. We recently had the appearance of Lord Nrsingadev, the incarnation of divine anger. Lord Nrsingadev in the corner. Some people don't like to look at that picture. Guests come and say, "Who? What is this? My goodness, it's frightening." Well, this is Lord Nrsingadev expressing his anger at Hiranyakashipu, who, basically speaking, he's just tearing to shreds. But why is he doing that? Because Hiranyakashipu was trying to kill his own son, who was a great devotee of the Lord, a pure devotee. So how is it that Hiranyakashipu, a demon of a caliber we can't conceive of, he was so powerful, he actually was, he supplanted, he overran the universe, he was controlling the workings of the universe. He was so powerful. He got benedictions that he couldn't be killed in so many different ways. Ultimately, he was outwitted by the Lord. But how is it that Hiranyakashipu, a gold star demon, how is it that he had Prahlad Maharaj as a son? How is it that he had a son like Prahlad Maharaj? It doesn't seem to fit, does it? Doesn't seem to fit. And it wasn't something I really thought about personally until I read something from one of the Puranas, and I couldn't tell you what the Purana was. It was a quote. But when Hiranyakashipu, who'd been performing austerities for how many celestial years was it? Hundreds, thousands celestial years? It was a long time. It was hundreds of thousands of our earthly years. Long, long, long time. And after he'd finished his austerities and got the benediction, he came back to his family and his palace. And during the course of his meditation, his austerity, his meditation was interrupted. And his wife asked him. He came back to the palace and he was going to unite with his wife. He'd been celibate for a long, 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 long time. But before they united, Hiranyakashipu, his wife, she said, "How is it that your meditation was interrupted?" And Hiranyakashipu said, "It was interrupted by a parrot, one or two parrots. I can't remember, one or two. Parrot. Well, how is it? How is that? That parrot was saying something. He was saying Narayan, Narayan." And Hiranyakashipu said, so he was saying Narayan, Narayan. Actually, the parrot was a deva, one of the devas who came to interrupt Hiranyakashipu's meditation. This isn't in the Bhagavatam. This is in one of the other Puranas. So, prior to uniting with his wife, Hiranyakashipu is saying Narayan, Narayan. So, he was a very powerful demon, and very fixed. So what to speak of the potency of a human couple who chant Hare Krishna mantra with devotion, some 50 rounds or so. So great souls are already taking birth. Some of the devotee children are quite extraordinary. And Srila Prabhupada has said, he's given quite a few hints. He said, our children's children will be the real preachers. Prabhupada said that the demigods, the devas, are lining up, queuing up to take birth in Lord Chaitanya's movement. Queuing up. But that depends on the householders. That depends on the purity of the unity of the householders. So I say that the future of the Hare Krishna movement lies with the Grihastas. We can go out and preach and bring devotees. It's wonderful. But even more powerful, we can invite great souls to take birth in devotee families. That's the future of the Hare Krishna movement. Just as there wouldn't be a Hare Krishna movement without Srila Prabhupada. And he took birth by the invocation of his own father. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta took birth because of the invocation of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So we live in the realm of birth and death. There's no avoiding birth and there's no avoiding death. But we can sanctify our birth, or the birth of those we're responsible towards, and we can sanctify our own death by becoming Krishna conscious. So I'd made lots of notes, but I was advised there's some of you on the be a monk. I've got to be careful how I say that. Not be a monk, but be a monk. So I've modified this a little bit just to give you an overview. But we've got a couple of minutes for any questions. I'd be happy to answer any questions or queries. Thank you very much. Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
This idea of a soul choosing to take birth in a particular family.
Yeah.
Can you really explain, does a soul have, an embodied have some conscious choice? Or is it more just their karma they're being directed by?
So I'm sorry, do you want to repeat it? It's for the benefit of everyone online. Hare Krishna, everyone online.
Yeah, just when you're describing a soul choosing to take birth in a particularly favourable situation, what is the conscious choice of that soul? Is it just directed by material energy? Or they're actually saying, oh no, I want to go into that womb?
I wish you could answer that question. I don't know. But we do know that things act on a process of resonance. That like attracts like. And those demigod departments who supervise the birth of souls, you can be sure that they arrange for a particular soul to take birth in a suitable body. But it is by material arrangement. And according to the proclivity of the particular soul, they're either attracted to, just like, and these days there are so many how to describe it without being too offensive, I'm talking about how people come together these days. There's all sorts of very strange and bizarre ways that people get their sexual gratification. So if there is a conception in that, from that situation, in many cases, some very conditioned and you could say polluted souls will take birth in a particular. They're attracted towards a particular mentality. For those who are taking birth from higher realms, those things are arranged, and it could well be that they have a choice. Oh, I want to take birth, but I don't know. But things go on according to Krishna's, according to the Lord's arrangement. I'm sorry, I can't be more specific. Any other questions? Prabhu.
Thank you for the class. I heard from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he said that he would have, many children if he could be guaranteed of a pure devotee, and so then he had took the renounced order of life. So I was wondering, in terms of, he was very Krishna conscious, and so I was wondering if you could say anything about that, in terms of even someone in his state of mind can be guaranteed of a pure devotee taking birth.
A good point. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, said he would have dozens, perhaps he said hundreds of children, if they could be pure devotees. But sometimes, by the Lord's arrangement, even the great souls, despite their pure intention and pure consciousness, it's not always a fact that they have great souls as children. In Srila Prabhupada's case, he had several children. And Prabhupada renounced his family. He was disappointed. His wife wouldn't help him in his preaching. His children weren't particularly interested in Krishna consciousness. So one might think, well, how can that be? Well, the reason would be because Prabhupada had a much bigger family waiting for him. He had a much bigger mission than creating a family unit. Srila Prabhupada's father, Prabhupada's father was a self-employed. He was a vaishya, he was a cloth merchant. He'd buy and sell cloth, but he was a pure devotee. In that case, his son, Srila Prabhupada, was brought up to be a... Prabhupada said a few times, he said, I think perhaps he knew that I had a great destiny. Because his father arranged for Prabhupada to learn to play mridanga. He arranged so many things. Instead of sending Prabhupada to London to be a lawyer or get a Western education, he didn't want that. He knew he had a much brighter future, a much more significant future than merely a professional. So the pure devotee, Advaita Charya are in the Panchatattva, Sri Advaita Charya. He had a number of sons, and some of them turned against him. Some were Mayavad influenced, and some were Vaishnavas. Not always guarantee, because ultimately everything is under the will of the Supreme Lord. Everything is under the will of the Supreme Lord. So even amongst the families of those who are demonic by nature, one can still sometimes find great souls who take birth, who are interested in spiritual life at least. Amongst ourselves, I don't know how many of our parents had even heard of Garbha Samskara, even amongst those from an Indian background. And yet here we are, showing an interest in spiritual life. So there are no material limitations. It's simply our intention. The whole process of bhakti is to purify our intention, so that ultimately every field of our activity becomes spiritualized. So that's some reflections on this particular verse. And we'll find out in the next verse a bit more about Vidura's past and the circumstances in which he took birth as the son of a servant girl. Yet he himself was a pure devotee, great exalted soul. So we've only touched on a few of the points here. I'll just finish. When do we have to finish for? No? Huh? Yes. 10 minutes ago. Okay, I don't want to keep you from breakfast. So I had statistics here about the number of abortions going on in the world. There's 73 million abortions every year around the world. That's unbelievable. That's 200,000 abortions every day. Unwanted progeny. So the whole purpose of Garbha Samskara is wanted progeny. An unwanted progeny, when they're born, become a disturbance in society. People feel, I'm not wanted. So many problems, in our world today, because of unwanted progeny. So, please chant Hare Krishna, whatever you're doing, and come on Harinam on Saturday night, spread the holy name. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.